In this ship, underneath the cargo, is a secret. Actually, 9 secrets, and it'll turn deadly soon if these secrets are found out. These secrets are actually 9 Ghanaian stowaways who have fled their country in hopes of finding a better life. Problem is, what they've done is illegal and can cause major problems for the captain and crewmen if they're found upon docking in England. There had already been a rise in stowaways being found in the bottoms of ships, and these occurrences have caused major fines and legal repercussions for the ship crews. To avoid these constant occurrences, on this particular ship, there is an investigative representative on the ship to watch the captain and crew to make sure they're not actually allowing this criminal activity on their boat, and to make sure they're following guidelines and protocols to avoid further fines. All seems to be going well, except one of the secret's footprints have been discovered on the deck, and the crew is now aware of infiltration. To keep the investigator unaware of what's happened, the crew has to handle this secret problem immediately. Question is, will they find the secrets without incriminating themselves to the investigator? And if so, how will they do it? In disgusting, unimaginable ways. During this time, with all the talks of the United States government cracking down on immigration, and with deportations escalating under the new Trump administration, many immigrants and migrants find themselves desperate to escape their homelands, to come to or to stay in the U.S. In some cases, they are willing to risk everything, even their lives, to seek a better future. None of this is new, and all of this has always been dangerous. People from other countries and continents have always sought refuge in bigger or deemed better places to escape the nightmare of their home and to have a dream life. For some, the journey is not just perilous, but deadly, which leads us to today's horrifying case. This story takes us to the treacherous seas in the fall of 1992, when a young Ghanaian man named Kingsley Ofosu would experience firsthand the lengths to which some would go to escape poverty, uncertainty, and fear of deportation. In the early 1990s, Ghana, like many other African nations, faced significant economic hardship. For many young people, the promise of a better life lay far beyond their homeland. Europe, with its relative prosperity and opportunities, looked like an amazing opportunity. It was no different for Kingsley Ofosu, a young Ghanaian man looking for a way to escape the harsh realities of life in his home country. Kingsley Ofosu was born in 1970, the eldest of 4 children in a household where dreams had to compete with reality. His mother, a determined woman, made out a living selling produce, and from an early age, Kingsley learned that hard work was not a choice but a necessity. His ambitions stretched beyond the marketplace. He dreamed of becoming an automotive engineer, of mastering the intricate dance of gears and engines. But dreams like his came with a price he simply couldn't afford. With money scarce and responsibilities heavy, Kingsley made a sacrifice that so many in his position were forced to make. He left school early, trading textbooks for toil, ambition for obligation. The docks of Takoradi became his classroom. There, amidst the towering cargo ships and the salty breeze of the Atlantic, he found work, intermittent, grueling, and unpredictable. He loaded and unloaded goods, his hands calloused by labor, his mind restless with the knowledge that he was meant for something more. What Kingsley didn't know then was that the very port that provided him a meager livelihood would also become the launching point of the most harrowing chapter of his life. A journey that would force him to fight for survival in the darkest depths of human cruelty. On top of that, he was married and his wife was pregnant with their first child. He needed a financial come-up, and soon. In October of 1992, desperate to find a way out, Ofosu, along with 7 other Ghanaians, including his half-brother Albert Kodjo, made the fateful decision that would alter their lives forever. They decided to stow away on the MC Ruby, a Bahamian-flagged cargo ship making its way from Ghana's ports to Europe that was preparing to set sail. The journey on the MC Ruby was supposed to be a means to a new life, a ticket to a future of possibility. However, The harsh reality they would face would quickly turn this dream into a nightmare. The vessel, manned by a large Ukrainian crew, loaded the ship with Ghana's prized export, cocoa. While the crewmen stocked the ship with the goods, Kingsley and his 7 men snuck into the bottom of the cargo holds and waited for hours upon hours for the ship to leave. The scared men knew what they were doing was risky, but staying behind was no longer an option. For Kingsley, this wasn't just about escape. It was about opportunity. His dream of becoming an engineer and returning one day as a man of knowledge and skill was strong. But in Ghana, the path to that kind of future was blocked by poverty, and Europe, he believed, held the key. The stowaways had planned their hiding place carefully, blending into the shadows of the ship's cargo, but soon they discovered they were not alone. Another man, unknown to them, had already claimed a place within the ship's dark underbelly. He had boarded in Douala, Cameroon, during the vessel's previous stop, another soul gambling his life on the dangerous voyage ahead. Finally, the ship took off and the voyage began. Things started off well. For 5 days, they remained undetected, surviving in silence, rationing their food and water, clinging to hope. But then disaster struck. Their water container fell and was broken. This would force them to have to venture out in search of more. It was this single act of necessity that would lead to more trouble, and ultimately a single mistake would seal their fate. In the dead of night, as they crept through the ship in search of water, they left footprints on the deck, proof of their presence. This was not only a problem for the stowaways, but for the captain and crewmen as well. You see, due to the rise of stowaways sneaking onto ships and getting into other countries illegally, this was causing major issues for the shipping companies. Every time an illegal was found as a stowaway, this led legal repercussions for them and large fines up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The MC Ruby had already gotten into trouble earlier when a group of stowaways was released into New York upon docking their ship. This led to an investigative representative for the shipping company boarding the ship to see if there was crewman negligence, to see if company guidelines and protocols were being adhered to, and if not, not only would the crew be fired, they couldn't get rehired by other shipping companies, they'd be subjected to legal repercussions, and large fines being $45,000 per stowaway. The 8 Ghanaians in Cameroon was a big problem for the MC Ruby shipmen. After the crew let the captain know about the problem on their hands, knowing that he had to keep this discovery away from the investigator, the captain reluctantly gave the men permission to do what they saw fit, murder them. Not too long after finding the footprints, the crew discovered the 9 men. What followed was not just cruelty, it was a massacre. The Ukrainian crew seized the stowaways, stripping them of their money, before locking them inside a cramped, airless compartment near the ship's anchor chain. For days they were starved and given nothing but 3 bottles of water, barely enough to keep them alive. Then, on the morning of November 3rd, the slaughter began. The crew, unwilling to risk the heavy fines that came with smuggling illegal immigrants into Europe, made a brutal decision. 2 by 2, the crew led the men out and assured them they were being moved to a more comfortable space. But this was a lie. Instead, the stowaways were met with the cold brutality of death. Some were bludgeoned with iron bars, others were shot at point-blank range. One by one, their bodies were tossed into the dark ocean somewhere off the coast of Portugal. Among the last to be taken was Kingsley Ofosu and his half-brother Albert Kodjo. As they stepped out, they noticed something chilling. The crew's clothing was stained with blood. Instantly, they understood. This wasn't a relocation. This was an execution. Panic surged through them. They tried to fight to flee, but there was nowhere to run. Albert Kodjo was gunned down before Kingsley's eyes, his body unceremoniously thrown overboard. Kingsley, fueled by sheer survival instinct, broke free and plunged back into the depths of the ship, vanishing into the shadows before the crew could grab him. For 3 days he remained in hiding, his breath shallow, his body weak, his mind racing. He could hear them searching, hear their curses and footsteps, but somehow he evaded capture. When the MC Ruby finally docked in Le Havre, France, Kingsley Ofosu knew he had one chance to expose the horrors that had unfolded on that ship. Slipping off the vessel under cover of darkness, his body weak from hunger but his mind sharp with purpose, he made his way through the unfamiliar streets until he reached a police station. There he recounted the nightmare he had endured, the murders, the betrayals, the fight for survival. But he had done more than just escape. In an act of genius, before leaving the ship, Ofosu had hidden a crucial piece of evidence, his Ghanaian identification papers. He hid them inside one of the cocoa sacks in the cargo hold, and it was proof that he had been there, that his story was real. Investigators later uncovered another grim confirmation: human waste in the cargo hold, undeniable evidence that more than one man had stowed away on that voyage. The ghosts of the murdered had left their traces behind. The truth unraveled quickly. 4 crew members cracked under pressure and confessed. Soon after, 6 men stood trial in Rouen, France. Their defense attorneys scrambled to poke holes in Ofosu's testimony, pointing out that the stolen money was never recovered and questioning whether he had accurately identified every culprit. They claimed the unknown Cameroonian stowaway had leapt into the sea after their discovery, attempting to cast doubt on whether all 8 men had truly been murdered. But their arguments were weak, and the confessions spoke louder than any courtroom theatrics. 2 crew members directly admitted their involvement, naming the ship's first mate, Valery Artemenko, as the one who had given the order to kill. The captain, Vladimir Ilnitsky, did not deny what had happened. He simply admitted the truth that sealed his fate. He had not ordered the killings, but he had done nothing to stop them. Justice, though delayed, was delivered. 5 men were convicted. Ilnitsky and Artemenko received life sentences. 3 others, Oleg Mikhailevsky, Petr Bondarenko, and Sergei Romashenko, were sentenced to 20 years behind bars. The 6th defendant, a Georgian crew member named Jamal Arakamia, insisted he had refused to take part in the slaughter. Ofosu himself could not place him at the scene of the executions, and so Arakamia walked free. The MC Ruby/Kingsley Ofosu case made international headlines, as it was revealed that the crew of the MC Ruby had murdered the stowaways in cold blood to avoid legal consequences. Yet for all the horror that had come to light, French harbor authorities revealed a chilling truth. This case was likely not unique. They admitted there was no way of knowing how many crews had murdered stowaways at sea, their crimes vanishing into the abyss, undetected and unpunished. For Kingsley Ofosu, survival was more than just a stroke of luck. A devout Christian, he believed divine intervention had spared him so that he could bear witness to the unspeakable, so that the lost voices of the MC Ruby would not be forgotten. After surviving the horrors aboard the MC Ruby, Kingsley Ofosu sought to rebuild his life in France. He dreamed of bringing his pregnant wife from Ghana to join him, hoping that his survival would mark the beginning of a new, prosperous chapter, but reality was far less forgiving. Without stable employment, he couldn't meet the legal requirements to sponsor his family's immigration. The Promised Land had yet to deliver on its promise. Still, a glimmer of opportunity emerged. Ofosu struck a deal with the Union Pictures, selling the motion picture rights to his story. His story was immortalized in the 1996 film Deadly Voyage, where actor Omar Epps portrayed Ofosu, capturing the horror of that fateful journey. Yet, even as his story reached a wider audience, it didn't do much in bettering his future. The money Kingsley received wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to sustain him in France, at least for a while. With renewed hope, he enrolled in college, determined to pursue his dream of becoming a civil engineer. He studied diligently, learning French, preparing for the life he had once imagined. But his studies remained unfinished, and when the money ran out, so did his chances. The only work he could find was low-paying, far from the bright future he had envisioned. Desperate to create a better life for himself and his family, Ofosu took his remaining savings and poured it into a business venture. The plan was simple: buy secondhand electrical goods in France and sell them at a profit in Ghana. At first, it seemed like a breakthrough, a second chance at success. But business, like fate, can be cruel. His partnerships in Ghana crumbled, and with them, his last financial lifeline. By 2007, Kingsley Ofosu was back where his journey had begun, living in Ghana, now with his wife and 4 children. The years had passed. The world had changed, but his circumstances remained painfully familiar. He had stared death in the face, survived against impossible odds, and made headlines around the world. But in the end, the struggle for survival never truly ended. Kingsley Ofosu's story is one of survival, but not victory. He escaped a floating execution, outran death, and lived to tell the tale. Yet in the end, survival did not bring him justice. It did not bring him fortune. It did not even bring him the future he had risked everything for. The men who threw his companions into the sea were sentenced, but Ofosu was never truly compensated for his suffering. The film that told his story made its money, but he saw none of the profits. The courts ruled in his favor, but the promised payment never came. A man who had defied the odds, exposed a massacre, and lived to bring the truth to shore, was left to struggle, once again in the very poverty he had fought to escape. But his story is not just his own. The MC Ruby was not the first ship where desperate men were thrown to their deaths, and it was likely not the last. How many nameless souls have vanished beneath the waves, their stories never told, their murders never punished? How many ships still sail today, their cargo holds hiding the hopes and the bodies of those willing to risk everything for a better life? Kingsley Ofosu was supposed to be the exception. He was supposed to be the one who made it. But in the end, his fate is a chilling reminder. Sometimes, even survival is not enough. In the years that followed, Ofosu would struggle with the psychological toll of the murders. The trauma of watching his fellow stowaways die at the hands of the crew weighed heavily on him, even as he continued to seek solace in his own survival. Kingsley's personal pain and struggles remained private, shared only with those closest to him. But in 2023, Kingsley Ofosu's life took another unexpected turn. The survivor of one of the most tragic crimes of the 1990s found himself entangled in legal difficulties. He was arrested in Ghana for allegedly defrauding an individual of 120,000 euros in 1998. The charges shocked the public, as Ofosu had been known more for his survival story than for any criminal activity. He was remanded into police custody, but later granted bail. He'd been on the run for 26 years, and due to his inability to meet bail conditions, he remained in custody, adding yet another layer of complexity to his already turbulent life. The story of Kingsley Ofosu is one of survival against unimaginable odds, but it is also a stark reminder of the desperation faced by immigrants in search of a better life. In the context of the current climate of immigration policies and deportations, Ofosu's story highlights the dangerous lengths to which some are willing to go to escape not just poverty, but the fear of being sent back to places where they feel their lives are at risk. The deaths of the Ghanaians aboard the MC Ruby are a haunting reminder of the harsh realities some immigrants face, their lives reduced to nothing more than an inconvenience for those unwilling to see them as human beings. It is a story that raises uncomfortable questions about the value of life, the cost of survival, and the human capacity for cruelty. As Kingsley Ofosu's life continues to unfold, it serves as a chilling reminder that for some, the pursuit of a better life may come at the highest cost, a cost that, for many, is simply too much to bear. This documentary serves as a tribute to the victims who lost their lives on that ship, as well as a sobering reflection on the price of survival, the harsh realities of immigration, and the lengths people will go to for a chance at something better. So lurkers, what do you think? Have you ever heard about the Kingsley Ofosu case? Do you feel like justice was served? What do you think about the current mass deportations that's happening now? Let me know your thoughts down below.